as always on a panel, I'd like to kick it off by having you share a few minutes about your background. So we'll start on my farthest. Ananya, tell us who you are, what you do, what makes your clock tick, so to speak.
Yep. So hi everyone, really excited to be here and thank you for the invitation. Hi, my name is Ananya and I'm a cloud solution architect for all data and AI workloads for Microsoft. I advise strategic customers mostly on the retail side, but also a little bit on the FSI side and on the education sector on all of their data and AI strategies, like how do you use your data for better AI systems. And of course, most of my focus these days is generative AI. So how do you build generative AI solutions, workflows, how do you take those solutions from ideation through piloting to building an MVP solution and all the way to production with responsible AI frameworks.
Cool stuff. Cool stuff. Thank you so much. Ladies first, please.
Keri, I lead marketing at Attentive. We are a marketing platform mostly for retail, but we're across about 70 different verticals and industries. And we really lead in the marketing platform space as far as own channels. So SMS, email, push, and now the invention and creation of RCS in the US. It's been around for a long time internationally. And we're really leaning into AI beyond generative. A lot of our competitors and customers in the space do have generative AI, but we're really working on predictive machine learning models. How do you actually deliver high performant real results to consumers and know their identity across the retail channels and deliver them, like, for the first time ever, a real one-to-one experience. And that's where we're really focused as far as our investments and our innovation. And it's definitely what separates us. I've been in B2B marketing for over 20 years in Seattle. Most recently, I led B2B marketing at Zillow for 8.5 years, but love the new retail space.
Awesome.
Chris Raulf, founded Boulder SEO Marketing, initially started this business as a local SEO company. We are now working with companies and brands all over the US, even internationally. We have updated ourselves recently with the emergence of generative AI. Everything is changing, where we're transitioning more to a content marketing agency that happens to be really good at SEO and heavily uses AI. So I'm really excited to be part of this panel to better understand, what's happening with the data, because we heavily depend on folks like you guys. So I think it's going to be a very interesting panel to explore, how this stuff works.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to start with Keri based on something you said in your intro and this idea of, obviously it's a mobile first world where you are, but what we talked about is the data need there and AI to support that. So tell us about how you're leveraging AI in that and using AI to scale. And then Ananya, I'd like you to add on to that to talk to us about the AI tools that we're leveraging to be able to do these things.
I'm going to leave all the models to Anya for sure. I think something that you just said, Chris, on how do we think about the data, like even from an SEO perspective and first party data, and what happens to the user or the buyer or the searcher's data. And for us, where we're really focused is how do you leverage data at scale? And so that requires you to actually have the data and know where the data comes. So first party data, more important than ever. How do you collect? People are incredibly busy. They're searching across multiple devices in different locations at different times, and you're losing signal no matter kind of what industry you're in. So how do you take all that data, harness it, able to actually track it? So you have the signal and the indicators of the person from their browse history all the way to their purchase history. And how do you act like you know them? And I think what AI lets you do is people have had that data as long as we've had mobile marketing. It's just been in multiple places and you couldn't harness it in a way that at scale, you could build a true one-to-one experience. It was rules-based. You could put segments of people based on behaviors at different buckets of rules-based marketing. And AI kind of rips away all of those rules and says, no, actually, if you have the data, whether it's laid over the top of a data warehouse or you're actioning it within a platform, if you have it, consumers, all of us, expect to be treated like you know us. We've given you all of our data. Treat us like you know us. Same to be said in B2B marketing. I don't open emails that look like it's the same email that 80 other people got. And AI is making that possible to where it can actually action within seconds, not hours, not days, within seconds. If you go and search for green pants on Patagonia, within seconds, we can serve up to you via SMS or email the pants that are available in your size that look like those pants, or when they're coming, or hey, you left it in your cart. And it's very personal. And I think that's where we are today with AI makes that possible.
That's amazing. Just thinking about the retail data set that you have available and the actions that you can take. So Nanya, I'd like to help us understand how AI is making that possible, what we can expect to see in terms of how these models work.
Yep. So last 1.5 years, when all this AI incitement started, right, especially on the generative AI side. Firstly, AI is not new, right? It has existed since 50 years or more than that, right? But then with all the buzz with generative AI workloads, with generative AI models, with the introduction of ChatGPT and buzz, that makes content more conversational. Like you can have a conversational chat. So enterprises are now focusing on data quality. So you know that you have these large language models, the small language models, which can go over your data, provide you insights, provide you with content, but then your AI systems are only as good as your data. So we say garbage in, garbage out, right? So which is where all the importance of data quality is right now. So consolidation of data. So wherever you have your data, like if it is a data warehouse, you have your data on cloud, for example, or on CDP, like wherever, right? So the first thing is bringing all those data together. And in most of the cases, when we do the architectures, it's not that you have to physically move the data. You can also have a connector to the data. So somehow you need to have access to the data and all the data at one place so that you're not analyzing your data in silos. So, so that is the first thing that will bring for an organization. So once you have your data at one place, then you have these models go over your data, find patterns, find insights, of let's say marketing insights, or let's say, like personalization. To your example, right, when you go to a Patagonia website and you say, hey, I'm looking for a green colored pants. Let's say I'm a woman of 33 years age, and and it gives you results which is personalized to you. And these days we are not just doing content search, right? So we are not doing content or we are not doing keyword search. We are doing more contextualizing search. So it is not only understanding your keywords, it is understanding your content, or like what context do you have. So yeah, we generally, when we do search on these websites, like even if you do a Bing search, right, it's not a keyword matching these days. So we are all doing vector search. So basically the keywords that you're entering, we're converting it to a vector, something that the machine learning model understands. And then on the other side, you have all the data. It could be private data or public data, however it is. And then if you have public data, you will of course have your authentications and authorizations, Azure Active Directory, whatever on top of it, so that you know that you're getting access to the data that you have access to. And then on top of it, all these content is indexed and is available to as vectors. Then we do a k-means clustering, or some kind of a pattern matching to give you those results. So yeah, so it's not just keywords match. So we are actually understanding the the reasoning behind your questions, your context, any additional things. So yeah, that's one of the ways we have seen a lot of traffic come to these websites. And of course SEO is also getting optimized because of the insights AI is able to bring.
Steve, I have a question for my fellow panelists.
Yes.
Ananya, by the way, happy 50th birthday to Microsoft. So take us back to 2022, November 2022. All of a sudden, compute increases by I don't know how many fold. Were you guys prepared for ChatGPT and then Gen I? Did you guys know about this? And how did you deal with this influx of data? Yeah, that's my question.
So firstly, the OpenAI and Microsoft partnership is a long partnership. It just didn't start in 2022. So yes, so these were being worked on since a long time. These are not new. It's just the release of a model, the Chat GPT that came out in 2022. And that's when, the organizations, consumers got excited about it because, 1 million users signed up for Chat GPT, right? On a single day,
Yeah.
which probably the servers were not ready for. And if you remember back in the day, the systems were becoming a little slow. There was lesser context window. The context window at that time was only 4,000 tokens, whereas now we have models which is like 32K context windows. So of course, from there we have scaled up a lot more. But yeah, I think that's true for any new technology that comes in, right? And no one is like absolutely ready for it, but then you figure out as consumers scale, as organizations scale, as you have more traffic, you figure out on the way how to, scale.
Awesome. Sorry, follow-up question for Keri. What was the biggest challenge for you guys dealing with that situation? I'm sure all of a sudden you needed more servers and like,
Our AWS bill went up
Yeah.
a lot, as did everybody's, right? Like, while you have to invest in the eng teams to actually do all the machine learning work, it is expensive. And so that's why AI tools are not necessarily free when you get into the B2B space, because it costs a lot of money to build it as well as host it and make it work. But we've been investing in it for over 2 years. So we had an entire eng team dedicated to being in front of Gen AI as far as like the shopping experience, from copy assistance to image assistance and all those things. Where we've really doubled down is the predictive results side, which is it's made possible based on all the investments and the chip sizes and the real-time ability to process data. Like, that's what's been the game changer. More than Chat GPT for us on the generative side, it's literally the chip. Like, the NVIDIA chip it makes everything possible. It means we can talk to you in seconds, not days.
sorry, one more question, Steve. and it's
Keep-
back
No,
to-
this is supposed to be an open forum,
Yeah.
so please feel free.
So we work with e-commerce companies, right? All of a sudden, we're creating a lot more content. We're using AI as part of the assisted process to create content. So the websites are blowing up in terms of bits and bytes, right? Are you guys benefiting from selling them more storage, or how does that work? Like, how does it trickle down to you guys?
So we're a marketing platform. So
Yeah.
we don't make
Oh.
our own storage necessarily. So we're fee and usage based. So based on the amount of emails, the amount of texts, the amount of messages you send. So for us,
Okay.
it doesn't matter. Like, it's a better shopper consumer experience if you have more dynamic content, period. Like, that is how you break through the noise with like crazy accelerated cost of acquisition of customers. The better experience is oftentimes through all of this content creation. So for us, like, the more content, the better, because the experiences are just getting more sophisticated and more image, video, carousel type based, and you need a lot of content in your product catalogs in order to compete there. So whether it's, you're taking a first time runner on a content journey of like where to train, where to buy your Hoka shoe, what program to follow, like all of that is content creation, and it lives in lots of places, but it's not something that we're monetizing.
Go ahead. I'm just waiting for your
It's
next
quite
question.
interesting for me to be among these experts. I'll have many more questions, but
No, please feel free to ask. Keri, I want to ask you, are you building on commonly known tools, or are you building your own tools based on LLMs? What is going on at Attentive to build out your AI models?
I mean, we partner with OpenAI. We partner with lots of different partners in the space. We have in-house engineers that we're actually building out our own models. And so we've been doing it for, like, we have this thing we've built proprietary. It's called the personalization engine, but it's really just a fancy way of saying, how do we enable all the AI with all of the data and all of the signals we have on all the consumers? How do we action it in real time? And it's our machine learning that actually makes that activation and ability to like track somebody's browse to buy history across all the different platforms, resources, and tools. So we've built like our own proprietary models in-house for machine learning.
Very cool. And Chris, for you, when I think about this from an SEO perspective and bringing customers to websites, right? You and I have done this a long time. There's an audience question and there's a targeting question, but obviously there's an AI component to it. One is using AI to attract those people, right, in your content, your SEO. But when we think about that first party data set that Keri was talking about, how do you think AI is going to influence that first party data set to contribute to the greater sort of data repository we have and information about our clients?
that's a great question. And I think it's something anybody can implement immediately. We do it at my business, and we're not technical experts, right? But on a micro level, we have created a virtual Chris. My business partner set it up. It probably sits on top of ChatGPT or whatever, right? Where it's so easy apparently to create your own language model, where now my employees can go to and answer questions the way I would do, actually way better. That thing is way smarter than I am. So we're feeding it with, I speak globally about AI and SEO, etc. So we feed the transcripts into the virtual Chris. And then when I'm on the phone with potential clients, I discuss, brand new content. We upload that stuff. So that's something that I'm interested in, how safe is that data? To be honest, I have no idea. I just know it's critical for us to be successful. And then what we're doing now, we're setting up a language model for every client so that we can produce better content for our clients. Because clients suck at creating content. They don't want to talk to you, etc. So we take whatever we can get and upload it and create a custom language model for these clients. So my question to you guys, is that legal? Like, how safe is that data? I guess we'll do it and we'll deal with the consequences later.
Make money first, settle lawsuits.
Well, you
That's so cool.
if you've built like a bot for yourself or someone else as far as a language model. Because everybody's been playing around with it, like basically training models on, we're doing it for brand, right? Like how do we train a model to actually know our brand so we can quickly create content based on the user audience? But our marketing team is tasked with everybody. Like we spend hours a day in figuring out how do we get, we're not trying to replace jobs. We're trying to do more work and be more efficient and have better results with the marketing we do across our team of 60 people. I'd love for that team to stay the same size and we deliver 2x the results for the company, whether it's lead volume or customer retention. That's how we're thinking about it. Is it safe? And what will happen with your data? I'll let Anya talk.
So before Ananya answers, so what I did, just to give you an example, and something that anybody can do like right now. So I had a 2-hour conversation with a potential new client. The guy was extremely smart. He knew about SEO, AI, etc. So I transcribed the call and then I built a custom GPT or Gemini. And I said, hey, please create a proposal based on the discussion that we had. I tweaked it a little bit. I sent it over to him. He signed up because I really understood what we discussed, right? Is that data, where does it go?
Okay, yeah. So this is something we do generally in all Microsoft Teams calls, right? We transcribe all of the data. Of course, if the customer wants us to transcribe, but then this is a great use case, where you don't have to manually take notes and you don't have to, forget things. Plus, all of your notes is at one place. So anytime you need something, like I am a big fan of Microsoft 365 Copilot. I don't have to anymore go through my notes and go through my emails. Like the last conversation I had with so and so person, right? I can just ask the Copilot and it will give me a summary and also where it sourced it information from. So it also give me the link of that particular citation or that particular email that it got a conversation. So it's great time savings. And in terms of, if it is safe, it is absolutely safe. And, if you have the right tools and governance in place. So we talk about responsible AI, right? How trustworthy your AI is, like, how governed it is. And do you have the right policies in place? Do you have the right networking in place? So as long as you have those things in place, your data doesn't go out of it. I can talk about, Azure AI in particular, because we have the entire infrastructure and all these new models, right? LLMs or, Azure OpenAI models or the Microsoft small language models like, 5.4, 3.5. These are all within the Azure ecosystem. So your data is not going out at all. And it is not being even Microsoft doesn't have access to your data. We do some content, moderations to make sure that if you are making, for example, a bot, like in your case, so we do not want someone to be able to have harmful conversations or bad conversations with that bot, right? So for those, we have something called content moderation. So as soon as you see any harmful keywords, any abusive keywords or things that you don't want, right? So it will block those keywords because you want to make sure that you're not being able to have just any conversation, right? So we have those things, those guardrails in place as well. Plus also safety guardrails like prompt injection, jailbreak. So any bad actor, if they are trying to play with your bot or somehow hack into your bot, they should not be able to do that, right? So as long as you have the right infrastructure, the right content safety, content moderation, jailbreaks, safety protocols in place, you're good.
You make me feel better. Thank you. So there's a method to the madness. Thank you.
And most tools have it, right? Like most of the tools you're using out there right now have all of this built in. Like safety
and I would say too, and I want to get into this, Chris, to go back to you and talk about this data set, because we talked about it a little bit during our warm up. is that this idea that you still own all the data. It's that first party data that we own. We collect the data. The data is not always going into the model. The model accesses the data. And Ananya, if you could tell us a little bit more about how that works, because we're not uploading all of our data to the model, right?
Yes. So, so in traditional machine learning, right? When we did like let's say in 2021, when ChatGPT was not as common, not that these models did exist. These were still in the making. But yeah, so when we did traditional machine learning or predictive analytics, right? So we would take a data set and train a model and make a machine learning model out of those data set, like typical data scientist job, like split your data 70-30 split, and then train your data, and then make sure that you also run a validation set to make sure that your models are giving you good results. So in that case, your data is going into the model because your model is now being trained with this data set. Talking about large language models, these models are pre-trained models. We call it GPT models, right? Like generated pre-trained. So these are already trained on a humongous amount of data. So you're not training these models. Now, since these models are pre-trained, so it does have a lot of context. It does already have a lot of knowledge. So when you are like, let's say you want to, so you don't want to use the public chat GPT, like you do not want the chat GPT to answer based on its general knowledge. So what we say is you ground these models, let's say a GPT-4 model, right? So or a GPT-4o model, which is multimodal, like it can take image as well as input. So if you want to ground in your data, let's say you're building an enterprise copilot, you have your HR data, your benefits data, few data, and you want you want to build a bot or a chat service and make it available for your employees so that they can have chat and you just for commonly asked questions. You don't have to reach out to HR. For things that is already there in the documentation, you can quickly get answers to. So in this case, the model is all your data or your grounding data is not going into the model. So the model is only still sitting on top of the data. So we call it RAG, right? Like retrieval augmented generation. So the model, or let's say GPT-4 model, is only interacting with your data. So you can have Azure AI search or something to index your data. And thus this data is now available to the model. So this model is not being trained on the data. They are only acting on your data. So that's with RAG. Now there is for more like industry specific niche use cases, what you can do is you can also fine tune these models. So these models are already there, they are already pre-trained, but then you want to train them on your specific data set, right? Firstly, fine tuning a large language model is a bad option because it's going to cost you a lot. So you'll always, if you have to fine tune, you'll always fine tune a small language model because in this case, the cost will be more efficient and you'll have, it'll be less costly. So yes, you can fine tune your data only when you're fine tuning a model. That's where you're using your data to, actually go into the training of the model. Otherwise, for normal use cases, just to a typical RAG architecture, you'll be fine and your data is not going into the model. Your model is just acting on top of your data.
Chris, you still feeling better?
Yeah. Actually, I have a quick follow-up question if that's okay.
Please.
Carry on. So when ChatGPT came out in 2022 November, the globalization and localization industry reached out to me and said, "Hey, you're an SEO expert. Can you please do a webinar on how this stuff is going to impact global digital marketing, etc., etc." So I went to the internet and I found Transform X conference on AI. I watched, I think, 100 hours of videos. I think I became an expert during that time. And one thing that stood out to me was like, hey, every company, they're going to have to create a large language model for themselves or a micro language model, right? Because then they can feed information from their website, white papers, etc., into that thing, and then create really high quality source content that's actually developed by them. How does that, like, how much does that cost? Like, if you build, do you guys know, like, if a bigger company is interested in creating something like that, how does that work and how much does it cost?
I mean, it depends on what you're talking about. If you're talking about like a big B2B company that's providing services or some type of reseller in some format, the investment is massive, not just from a store, like it's millions of dollars to have a sizable database stored on AWS. So That's
It's actually so IBM, I listened to
Yeah.
their AI stuff. They have been able to automate away a lot of their HR people because they built a custom AI model where it answers everything. How much does something like that cost? What does it take to
Not
build
much.
something?
That's
No?
Yeah, not much. So as I was saying, right, so from moving from traditional machine learning to leveraging these LLM models, this LLM models actually doesn't cost a lot. So it's about your data. So it depends on how big your data is or what's your data volume. So it's the data storage cost that's going to be more. And how these models are being charged is by per thousand tokens. So it's only gonna, so the more
Can you explain the tokens? Because
Oh,
I
yes.
don't
Yeah.
quite understand.
So tokens, for example, is so if you're taking an entire sentence, like let's say my name is Ananya. So if you break it out into the most smallest segment, like I is one token, am is another token, right? Like butterscotch. So it's like 4 tokens. So it's basically the smallest segment of a natural language that the model understands. So basically it breaks an entire sentence into, small parts, and each part is called a token.
Okay.
So these models have like a token context window. So like for example, when the first 3.5, the GPT 3.5 model came out, so it had a very small token window, like of 4K, like just a 4,000 token. But right now, GPT-4 also has a 32K model. Like the new Llama model that's being launched by just last week, that has a huge token window. I think it's 128K, but I may be mistaken. But yeah, so the token windows are only expanding, which is great for scalability purposes. So yes, so the more tokens you use, the more conversations you have, you're giving more input tokens and hence getting more output tokens. So you're only being charged on those tokens. And you don't have to train a model. You can only do a RAG architecture, like basically have the model act on your data. So the cost is not going to be huge.
Fast, so it's compute. You basically buy
Yeah.
compute.
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Compute and the
Okay.
model which is already
Yeah,
pre-trained, but it already comes with the infrastructure. And as long as you don't use it, you don't pay it. So you're only being charged when you're talking to the model, for example.
I want to ask all three of you that everybody here is playing with AI, or some people might be building their own models, they're messing around with things. Tell us about building and testing and some of the pitfalls. And when you learned something was sort of ready for prime time. I mean, because Keri, you're going out and having conversations with customers, and obviously you don't want to send 10,000 text messages out and have them all go sideways on you. So how do you know something's ready for prime time? How do you test that? And what cautionary tales can you share with the audience?
Yeah, I mean, we do a lot of rigorous testing in-house for any MVP. So one of our products is AI Pro. AI Pro is basically like the right message, the right time to the right person in the brand voice that they're used to hearing. And that one took us a long time. We had to test and test and test because you can't have this very like candid, casual, fun conversation as one brand based on the data and the machine learning. You have to make sure that it's actually optimizing for the brand voice. And so brand voice was something that we spent months testing and saying like, can we get it right for brands who have some of the most beloved kind of relationships with their customers, whether it be an UGG or a Hoka or maybe a Crate and Barrel, as far as how do they talk to you? How do they show up? Some brands are casual and fun and candid, but like an Instagram e-commerce brand might be like talking all emojis and use mostly MMS. And so if you have this long conversation with them, you're like, who is this? Who's talking to me? Or you're talking about the wrong types of products to the wrong type of buyer. So that is, you don't want to get that wrong, because as important as getting people like the right message, whether it's email or an ad or whatever you're serving up, is when you get them the wrong message, they check out. They get irrelevant content that doesn't feel like the brand they know, or it's the wrong product. They actually are much, much harder to win back. Like 81% of people is like the latest data that says, if you give me something that's irrelevant, you're going to have to work twice as hard to get me back in the door. So you want to get it right. So we test for weeks until we get it right. We put it in small batches of sending it to ourselves, and then we send it to a certain set of customers, and we test our model against the brand who's doing all of their own messaging and writing their own text messages for that same customer, and we put them up against each other. And when we start winning consistently is when we say, okay, we're ready for prime time.
So that every customer is effectively their own template, because you've got to get the brand voice. So you have the model built that you think is going to work for everybody, but ultimately the brand coming in. So we used to do a long time ago, we did reputation work for White Castle. And if you read reviews about White Castle, people write shit is dope and all sorts of other slang that these reputation tools would flag as negative. And they were all positive comments for the brand. So you had to go in and manually do this to pick it out. So I can understand how you have to sort of chase that brand voice and understand it. That's got to be complicated for some of these brands. I see like Hoka on your list and things like that. How does it get? I mean, if you've got like some brands that are kind of funky,
Yeah.
how does that work? It's got to be crazy to do.
I mean, once the models are built, like when you can consistently take all the data into the right moments of the browse shopping experience, then you can act and like use the models to say like customize it based on what we know about that brand. It takes all the messages, it takes website copy, it takes every communication that that brand is putting out to the world, ads, content
As input.
creation as input, and then it basically aligns to that expectation. And it doesn't get it right all the time right away. But as we get bigger and as we do it more often for more brands, it's much easier to do it in a much smaller window and get it right the first few times. So you do adjust. It does take some tweaking. And sometimes a brand will be like, hey, like we're sending out random messages at the wrong time. It's at 2 a.m. UK time.
I do that at 2 a.m.
Right. But I mean, like, it's not when you would send somebody an abandoned cart message necessarily.
I'm gonna blame it on
if it's
AI.
The West Coast of the US. So there's constant like learning and adjustments that we have to kind of go through and refine. But the advancement of like the speed of which we can actually use all of the data makes it a lot easier to get right.
So from customer signing a contract to you launching the first public campaign, I'm sure it can vary, but what's your window?
It can be days.
Really?
Yeah.
That's incredible. Incredible. All right, Chris, to you. When you started building your model internally, because yesterday I told you should build a model and it's helped you scale efficiently. How do you know what were the speed bumps? What were the bumps in the road? What can we tell the audience about being mindful of as they build their own tools?
Yes, it's actually a very simple process similar, right? But in an extremely micro level process. So nowadays you can use deep research to basically get information about a customer, like instead of waiting for them to provide us with information. We built an AI agent called BSM Copilot, extremely easy to do, just sits on top of these large language models, right? And then we store the information about each client, the customer profile, the buyer personas, etc. Whatever this tool needs to get in order to provide me with the information that I want to create content. And then we let the tool run. It's going to do an AI overview analysis, scrape that content so that we know this is the most important information that we need to have in the content. It scrapes the SERP, the top 10 websites. Ultimately, once the tool does its job, right, the goal is to create an outline that then a real human being can write content. So throughout this process, our account managers, they have to check, did the tool do a good job? Is there content in there that shouldn't be in there? So that's why it's an AI, I would say, a human-driven AI assisted process right now. It's a very, very, very basic process, but it works. But ultimately, it comes down to a human has to check what the AI is doing, specifically for us, because we can write terrible content that will not do its job, right? So it's human oversight for us is critically important, and we highly depend on these tools to do all the research. Yeah.
Cool. And I'm going to go to you, Ananya, last on this because you're building the models that we all use. In some way, shape, or form. And obviously, we know that AI is prone to hallucination, sometimes mistakes, but how do you grow those models up to the point where you say, okay, we can release version 4, we can release version 4.3, we can do these things. How does that handle internally? I'm sure there's a ton of like regression analysis and other work that goes in, but tell us about that and give us some of the things that we might look out for on our own when we're building our tools.
Yep. So, when talking about how these models work, right? So of course these are first trained, and then when we are building a use case for a customer with these models, So first comes prompt engineering, right? Which is basically how do you instruct these models? That itself. So before a year, there was the saying that was going around like English is the new programming language, right? Because you can literally talk to these models in plain English and they will talk back to you. And right now, since these models can also do translation, you can actually have a conversation with them in your native language. It doesn't also have to be English, but they can understand this, right? So first thing is prompt engineering. And you can have different ways, like we have chain of thought prompting, we have few shot prompting. Basically, you're giving the models like, the thinking points, like how to think about a particular problem. And it is mainly used when you're doing math, when you're solving mathematical questions or mathematical problems. So if you give a chain of thought in there, so it will do better. You can also do few shot prompting, which is basically you're giving some examples. Like if this is my question, this is my answer. So you're giving two examples, and the third, you're giving a question, and then you ask the model to answer similar to your to how you have answered the previous two questions. So first is prompt engineering. So you're building the model, you're iterating the model, and then we always do evaluations in the loop. So the journey from building a prototype or a MVP to taking it to production involves iterations of evaluations and testing. One we can do is manual evaluations, like a human actually sitting and making sure that the outputs are grounded or correct and it doesn't impact the brand, blah blah blah. Right? This could also be automated evaluations, which is basically, other LLMs evaluating. So we have this concept of LLM as a judge, right? So other LLM systems or other high or, better LLM systems evaluating the output of a LLM, which has smaller context window, let's say. Right. And there are 6, 7 industry standard protocols that we use. One is groundedness. So the question that you're asking, and the answer that you're getting out of it, how grounded are those responses to actually your data? Because you have given a data set, right? So you don't want it to use its general knowledge and give you a generic answer. You want the answers that is present in your documentation, right? So one of the parameters is groundedness. Next is relevancy. Next is fluency, and then the coherence, right? Is it able to give you the answer in a more conversational manner? So there are all these, evaluation metrics that we make sure that you're you definitely have to pass this metrics for a model or for a AI application built using generative AI models to go to production. And you can also have your bar, on a scale of 0 to 5, let's say I need 4 on all these metrics. And that's when I know that I've built a great AI application which can go to production. So yeah, evaluation and testing is a critical part of everything that we ship.
I think there's so much in there for us to take away. We've got a question over here if we can run the box over. So much in there for us to take away for testing our own models and testing things we're building with prompting, building your own prompt language in and making sure you're getting the responses you want, making sure that's the same every time.
I just wanted to ask Ananya, in that process that you just described, how long does that take? Because all of you, it's a lot. It sounds like it's a lot of going back and forth. And I think Keri, you said it took days or something. But how long does all of that take? Seems like it's a lot of time investment too. But I don't know.
So it's one of those questions where the answer says it depends.
Our favorite answer in digital marketing.
Because it depends on, if your data is already at one place. It starts with that. If you are all set with your data, you have the highest level of data, you trust your data quality is amazing, then you're already few steps ahead. If not, then you have to start from all the way from consolidating the data sources, right? So that's your first step. And then when it comes to, building these models, it could be very fast. But again, you have to make sure that you're doing a good job at evaluation and testing before actually deploying let's say, a customer-facing application. If it's an internal application, probably you can ship it a little faster because it is internal, right? It's not going external to your customers. And then we also call something called RHLF, right? Which is basically, if you're, for example, developing an internal-facing bot that can answer questions on your HR benefits, right? So this is going to be available to your employees. So employees, once they get an answer, like they're asking a question, like let's say, how is my, my dental benefit or something, right? So it gives me the answer. I can also, there should be a thumbs up, thumbs down button somewhere. So if I'm giving a thumbs up, so the model will take into consideration that, okay, I did a great job at it. So it also learns from its previous conversations and from its, previous inputs. If it's a thumbs down, it knows, okay, maybe not, maybe I need to do better. So it depends. If it's an internal application, it can be shipped way faster if it's external. Of course, you have to do a lot more rigorous testing because you don't want to, do anything with your brand reputation.
We have
And then-
another-
Oh, so in my presentation later, I'm going to show you an example of an outline that was created, that process using AI, and we were able to take the time investment down from about 25 hours to about 4 or 5 hours. And I'll show exactly, including the back and forth. So for us, it's like time savings and time is money.
Before we get to your question, I want to get, since we're running out of time, I want to get closing thoughts from each of you, and then we'll take that question and we'll disappear into the sunset. So where is this headed? What can we take away from this, and what should we be thinking about as marketers in this space? Keri?
Yeah, I mean, think about your use case. I mean, think about how you would use it. All of you probably have different customers and a different use case internally and externally. Think about the biggest problems that take the most amount of time. Because there's not one AI solution for everything. The reality is probably a lot of the tools you're using already leverage AI. So understand what you're using and then figure out how do you bring in the right partners to solve it. I think just experience and expectations for consumers are just higher and higher and higher if you're in that space. And so the only way I think to really get ahead of it is invest to be able to truly kind of get to that hyper one-to-one personalization. I think that's the thing to focus on in the consumer market.
Thank you. Chris?
I'm going to keep it super short. Think back to the presentation that I gave yesterday, the question that I asked at the beginning. If somebody told you you would have access to all of the information on the internet and a tool that you can manipulate and get all the information and use it for things that you never would have imagined, what would you do with that tool? That's my, encouragement to marketers out there. Like, we don't take advantage of this technology yet. We have to.
So I'll say with AI, all the systems that we are building, we call those co-pilots, right? Those are not autopilots, which means that it is there to assist humans to do your jobs faster, being more productive, being more efficient. And before building anything with AI systems, please understand the responsible AI frameworks. Please know how to use these AI systems responsibly with the right networking and governance in place.
That's amazing. Jacob, you have a tech swap coming up for Dennis's laptop. Why don't you come up and we'll take a couple of questions from the audience while we do that. I think you've got the box.
Thank you. I wanted to ask a question. You guys were talking about like predictive AI is what you're using it mostly for, and I think that is probably kind of the next, one of the next trends. In the self-driving car industry, they'll do a whole lot of predictive what's going to happen with all the different things around, or the weather industry. I've heard they can predict up to 1,000 years into the future, hundreds of different scenarios. I'm curious how is this helpful for marketing, other than like, what if this got popular? Like, what kind of questions would we ask other than what if my post went viral? How could predictive AI and help with marketing, I guess?
And for predictive, for me, I'm speaking like specifically to a behavior of a certain situation. So if it's a consumer's behavior, how do you use propensity modeling and predictive to say what is the next thing that they're going to need, right? So if you're a person who's shopping for running shoes on Hoka, the next thing you might need are running shorts or insoles or a training program. So how do you predictively get ahead based on behavior to predict what that person's going to say yes to? How do you predict when they're going to purchase? They might shop and browse on the train on the way to work in the morning, but they typically shop and hit spend and send at 7 p.m. when their kids are winding down and getting ready to go to bed. Like you can predict the behavior specifically to that instance is how I would use it. But predicting the future, I mean, I think there's lots of different box of tools that you could use and ask any question to figure out like the models it could possibly get you to predict that.
Maybe I worded that wrong, but I felt like your answer was really good.
Awesome. We're going to call it up here. I'd like to thank my guests, Ananya, Chris, and Keri, for spending time with us and sharing their immense experience. Thank you very much.